Helldivers 2 is slowly turning into a game for no one, with the feeling you see more and more these days when it comes to describing how a player feels towards Helldivers being one of indifference or apathy. You see, it's important to first understand that apathy is not hate. Far from it. Apathy is the state of indifference or the suppression of emotions, resulting in a distinct lack of interest, enthusiasm, or motivation. It's a feeling of, for lack of a better word for it, just feeling meh. However, when you turn to the medical definition of apathy, it takes on a very important specificity. You see, medically, apathy is the lack of goal-directed activity. However, before we dive into all this, I wanted to say two things. The first is that I'm doing this video just mostly off the top of my head. It's coming from the heart, and so if my delivery is a little bit out of sorts, you know why. The second point is that I'm not taking this opportunity to curb stomp Helldivers while it's down. I've loved the game since my very first dive back in early 2024. Its combat sandbox offers up some truly unique ways to let players express themselves through tactics or skill. But love alone, or enjoying the combat alone, isn't enough to get this game to grow and ultimately to evolve. Back on June the 4th, we got this announcement from the Helldivers game director centered on progressing progression. Odd title, but okay. And inside this post from 𝗤𝗀𝗋𝗃𝗃, we learned about Galactic campaigns, a more specific application for player progression, some changes that were supposed to be coming in short order, which have still not all arrived. Keep in mind this post was from a month and a half ago. And finally, things like a level cap increase, fixes to Hellpod steering, and stratagem balls bouncing were effectively punted down the line, with all of that coming sometime later this year. In fact, if we run this thing back just a little bit further to the end of April, when Johan 𝗲𝗆𝗆𝗆, Arrowhead's CCO, took to Reddit with his unannounced Ask Me Anything, that makes it now, what, roughly 2 months, where we've seen what come to the game? A whole bunch of back and forth with armor levels and durable damage, landing us back where we started before all the tinkering began. We've now got Galactic campaigns, the campaign terminal, and in-game rewards are back for winning said campaigns, which should have never been taken out of the game in the first place. And, you know, overall players feel it. They might not be taking to the social channels and calling out the studio, but I guarantee you they feel it. They are internalizing it, and it's led to this general movement to other games. Right now, as I'm sitting down and recording this video, there's 48,500 divers logged on worldwide, with 35,000 of those being PC divers. Now, back when we got Xbox joining the game, there was that whole ODST war bond, and alongside it, the Into the Untested update dropped. And that's when we got that famous quote from 𝗕𝗎𝗇 𝗠𝗠𝗠𝗠 asking us to stop shitting our pants because the total player counts had topped over 500,000 players, including both consoles and PC. So in what, 10 months time, the game has shed 90% of its players that were diving back on September the 2nd, 2025. And I've got to tell you, Xbox players still haven't returned. They got into the game, they saw what was happening, and they just perma-checked out. And even now, you know how you can see them when you go to your friends list in game, but they're just like grayed out because they're all off playing something else. So now it's back to a vast majority of players being on PC, with a small slice you can find over on PS5, and a handful, I mean a smattering, left on Xbox. And at this point, the game is done expanding to new console markets unless Arrowhead or 𝗏𝗟𝗋𝗄 somehow ports it over to Switch too. So as a studio, this is what you've got to work with. Now the good news is that somewhere spread all over the globe, you've got something over 20+ million Helldivers, at least according to a report from Alinea Analytics back in January 2026. But as a studio, you've got to start giving those 20+ million players a lot more reasons to log back in. Back in late April, Arrowhead announced they were moving from a system of everyone got every reward, regardless of their circumstances, as soon as they logged back in, 1 month, 2 months later, whatever. All the medals, weapons, and cosmetics were there waiting for them, which is the system this game operated with from day one. It's always been 100% about community, managed democracy, all for one and one for all, you know. And we went from that to a system of incentivizing players to log in with in-game rewards. Log in sometime during the Galactic campaign, even if it's just for a few seconds. Stand on the bridge of your ship, log back out. If the players win the majority of major orders during the campaign, you're going to get the reward. But here's one of the factors that has plagued this game since it launched, being that none of this is actually spelled out for players in-game. There's something like 1.4 million people in the official Helldivers Discord. Not all of them are going to be seeing those announcements pop up over there, but there you go. That's how many there are. On the official Helldivers 2 YouTube channel, they've been posting these campaign trailers, Operation Census Thunder, Termicide 2.0, and these things range from 286,000 views up to 400,000. The studio also pushes out notifications to Twitter and Reddit and Steam, but again, none of this is found in-game. When you fail to meet your 20, 21, possibly 22 million players where they're found at, that being in-game, they start checking out. They weren't there for the April announcement that the Game Rewards was doing a complete 180 because they don't want all that smoke and insanity of logging into Reddit, X, or the Discord. Arrowhead is failing to meet the needs of its players when it comes to keeping them in the loop, and it's been this way since launch. There's no bestiary, there's no compendium. The Galactic table actually used to give us less information than it does now, but that took a long time to show up in game. Not to mention all the hidden mechanics in the game that players have to turn to third-party sites to even learn that they existed, like durable damage, status buildup, and the rest of it. Why is the broadcast terminal, that big screen TV thing, not blasting infomercials about in-game changes and hidden stats? The ship technician that drives us all batshit crazy when we get back from a crazy hot extraction and she's like, good mission, but you forgot the samples. I mean, first off, can we please get an emote that allows us to send her back to work in some far off terminal in the ship? But if that's not possible, why isn't she keeping players in the know about what's going on? Like if movies for our ship destroyer big screens take too much time and the Galactic campaign computer is busted, which it still is by the way, not running in DX11, and the campaign major orders are still not reading correctly, I feel like the ship technician with the clipboard could receive a higher calling and possibly give us some useful info for once. For instance, did you know shooting durable body parts with laser weapons is actually futile? Something that players could actually hear, process, and then take that knowledge with them during their next dive. Tangent over. Anyways, XO Experts released on April 28th. It's now, July 18th? In 10 more days, that's 3 months when we were told that War Bonds would release at 6-week intervals. Now, there was an announcement and a complete shift away from the last War Bond that was set to release, which was tossed around in the community, that it was the Helldivers War Bond with the FRV and supporting gear for that theme. And that was halted after the player backlash of putting vehicles into war bonds. And by the way, solid call there to take that one out of the rotation. But Helldivers is a live service game. It's often seen as a seasonal game. Players come back for the major story arcs, they log in to check out the new war bond, and then they slowly drift off again. Machinery of Oppression and the invasion of Cyberstan started back on February the 10th. We've already spoken about the lack of a war bond, which should not be the only means of progression players get to engage with inside the game. So, yeah, let's get into that. Also found in this June 4th post is a section spelling out player progression that is supposed to combo with the Galactic campaigns, bringing in personal campaign progress, which basically allows us to fight and earn personal rewards in case the Helldiver army as a whole loses a campaign and we stand to get 0 rewards for that weeks and weeks of effort. Unfortunately, like the level cap increase, Hellpod steering overhauls, stratagem balls bouncing and disappearing into the ether, and this player progression system, these things were all announced with a caveat of coming sometime later this year. When it comes to Arrowhead, I feel like they operate much like we heard about with recent reports concerning Bethesda and Bethesda Game Studios, and that in some cases, there was something like 14 levels of leadership, even a small, visual change had to pass through before it could actually get approved. I mean, there has to be someone over at Arrowhead that is willing to step up and say, this is what we're going to be doing, this is what I expect, and this is the time frame, no exceptions, no compromises, and it just gets done. The new Galactic terminal is cool, I guess, but the information it's giving us is the same we could find on the Galactic table, maybe just a little more fleshed out. But this new Galactic campaign system is exactly what we had back in the game in 2024. It's just now called a campaign system. It used to be 2 or 3 major orders back to back to back, Pick which planet you wanted to liberate with this reward attached, pull it off, get the reward. Or here's some new experimental weapons, try them out while battling the automatons, and since you won those major orders back then, those strat weapons are now available for permanent unlock on your ship acquisition computer. So it's the exact same stuff now. Fight for weeks, organize the troops, win or don't win a reward, the end. In the meantime, we've spent the last, 5 months going through an arms race with devs adjusting this over here with durable damage to enemies, then buffing Helldivers, and it's gone back and forth for months to now get us to a point where things can still hurt your armored vehicles, but now the little ankle biters can't. And, the community sees that. They feel it. My audio's busted. Oh, that's too bad. Here's a super credit hacker prevention mechanic. Hey, I can't steer my Hellpod and I keep landing in cyborg meat grinders. Oh, that's too bad. Here's a helmet. Missions and mission design has remained largely the same, and I feel like this could have been an area where Arrowhead could have invested the time instead of spending 5 months taking up dev time and monkey pawing durable damage changes back and forth to get us back to the point of a net zero. Now, I'm not a developer, but Hellpod steering and strap balls bouncing from here to the moon and back at one time worked better. Let's say they actually worked properly. So then why is it we need to form an official committee to investigate the issue that you caused and then come up with a proper solution? I try to contain myself right here. I'm literally clenching one of my fists. If you want to see players bounce from your game to play something different, install teeth-grinding bullshit that drives them nuts, and then tell them, hey, we hear you, Mr. Player. That's going to take us 6 months. Players don't have the time or the patience for that crap. You are the studio that installed it, so uninstall it. And can anyone explain why at times I will just randomly explode while on a planet or catch on fire when there's nothing on fire around me? What drives me crazy is Arrowhead has the winning formula. They had it back in 2024 before the Galactic War modifier was introduced, effectively gimping player efforts. And so my thought is they can find that winning formula again. And speaking of that modifier, it's high time to nuke that thing. Nothing gives a player a feeling of hopelessness more than what that modifier actually does. Now it's either follow the mob wherever it goes or face the possibility of no progress. And when players feel like a game is either aggravating them on purpose or not valuing their time, that's when you see the greatest feelings of apathy set in. I was there when the game launched and through that first year, and that's not the way this game felt. It was much more dynamic. We could launch covert operations on planets that were not tied to the MO, and we could do some actual damage there versus the bots or bugs. Malevelon Creek is just one example of what a smaller force of dedicated divers used to be able to do, but those days are over, which is in many ways why we see this tribalization of factions. It's an Illuminate major order, so why are you bug divers over there doing your own thing? That sort of thing. Way back when, it didn't matter. But it does now, and when you take away player choice to play the game the way they want to play it, they just move on. April 28th, Exo Experts War Bond drops, and we see quite a nice spike in the players, at least here on the PC charts, but 6 days later, it's crashed. Also, there's no visible spikes or improvements in the player counts since Arrowhead made that announcement that you had to log in to earn the Galactic campaign rewards, which means Helldiver players are motivated by other outside forces. Things that reward players and don't come in the form of a new shiny reward like a new FRV or rifle. Things like dynamic gameplay moments that create I was there memories. Things like speedy pro gamer changes that are made to improve the feel of the game versus we'll get to it by the end of the year. Things like skill expression when finding quirky ways to take on certain enemies that are quite a bit off meta. I'm not saying Helldivers sucks and it's the worst game ever, even though some are going to look at the video title and thumbnail, never watch a second of the video, and then pass judgment about the contents and context of said video. And, that's kind of expected. But when you've got new reward requirements and a Galactic campaign terminal, and it does bupkis for the player counts, we need Arrowhead to start looking at the things that seem to really matter to this community. Is loot cool? Of course, but we used to fight for something else and still show up by the hundreds of thousands. Now, outside of new content story arcs or a war bond, which will, yes, bring players back to then soon drift away, it still leaves the systemic problem of how to deal with the feeling of apathy. And for that to have any sort of effectual change on it, that needs to begin with Arrowhead. On a side note, I truly feel this game is 100 to 150,000 concurrent player game before a war bond drops or we add on a story arc expansion, if, big if there, if it is doing things to keep players' attention. Quick, pro-consumer fixes, new mission designs, player progression and customization, and a feeling of we stand a chance even outside of following the mob. Those are all things that can break the game away from this apathy anchor, but being told that crucial in-game mechanics that at one time worked and were broken by the studio are now going to be fixed sometime before the end of the year, that doesn't cut it. I mean, if it takes over a month for Arrowhead to come up with a plan on how Helldivers, who missed out on the supply FRV, are going to get it, along with an exact date and how much of whatever resource it's going to cost, I mean, if that announcement is now taking over a month, that's a perfect microcosm for what is broken at this studio. Let me end with this. We all want this game to excel. Hell, I much prefer making a video saying that Helldivers 2 just broke 500,000 players versus one that's kind of themed like this, but the current state of apathy is where we are. And my fear is that it's not only going to sustain itself, but that apathy is going to continue to grow. But as always, that's just my 2 cents on everything, and I'm sure I left out a million talking points that were worth mentioning. Drop a comment, and let's talk about things that need to happen to energize the once vaunted Helldivers player base. If you happen to like the video, please hit subscribe and ring the notifications bell to receive my future upload alerts. And as always, a special thanks goes out to all of our hardcore channel members, for without their support, content like this would not be possible. If you're interested in joining their ranks and getting access to special only channel member perks, hit join on my channel, as we've got plans and perks to suit everyone. Until the next one, this is 𝗲𝗲𝗹𝗶𝘀𝗂𝗏, signing off.